Another day, another dollar. You might not think money is something to sing and dance about, but don't worry, that's why I'm here. I'm Julie Beckham, the financial educator at Rockland Trust, and this is Behind the Curtain, Money Made Simple, the podcast that takes the mystery out of money and puts the spotlight on your financial life. If you've ever felt behind, confused, or just totally overwhelmed when it comes to your finances, you are not alone. In fact, you're part of a cast of thousands. So take your seat and silence your phones as we pull back the curtain on personal finance. Well, welcome to Behind the Curtain, Money Made Simple. I am so excited / nervous for this episode because I have a guest who I've never met, Christopher Penn. Welcome, Christopher.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and we were connected by a mutual friend, and I was thinking, who would make a great guest on this relaunch of Behind the Curtain, Money Made Simple? There's so many topics that I want to cover, and she said Christopher would, talking about AI. So Christopher is an AI expert, and I feel like I'm introducing someone like who knows something about something I have no idea about. And so I have to admit, because I feel like this is ironic, coincidental, I'm not sure the word, or just crazy. When I went to think of questions, I wrote a whole bunch down, and then I was like, well, I might as well just use AI and ask what I should ask Christopher Penn if he were to come on my podcast. And about, finance and AI. And I don't know if that's how I should be using AI or anything. So, Christopher, I've chatted enough. Welcome to the podcast. And please set me straight, because I think the world, including myself, is a little overwhelmed with this world of AI.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. Let's start with what is this stuff? What is, in particular, what is called generative AI? These are tools that are known as large language models, and they are basically really big statistical databases that tech companies have made that can predict the next thing in a sequence, typically the next word, the next sentence, etc. And when you talk with a tool like ChatGPT, as an example, all it's doing is trying to predict, okay, well, what are the words that this user wants to see next, right? So you say, I'm planning for retirement and I have, $20,000 in my checking account. What should I do? It takes apart that sentence and essentially looks in what it's been trained on and says, what are the logical sequences of words that would basically almost autocomplete kind of the answer. So that's kind of conceptually, very broadly how they work. Now, today's tools all have a lot of extra capabilities that are not in the engine of the model itself. Things like the ability to search the web, the ability to look at YouTube videos, the ability to check your email, and there's a lot of those extras that are built in to today's modern tools that make it much more powerful than it was, say, even a year ago. In the realm of personal finance, there's some really incredible things that people can do with these tools to improve their financial health. Before we get into any of that, one thing I want to emphasize is, well, two things. Number one, there's a rule in all of digital marketing that's been true ever since social media. If you're not paying, you are the product, right? So in particular, AI companies that give away free tools are collecting and using your data to train better versions of the models. This is generally true. So if you are not paying, if you're like, oh, a free AI tool to do this, it's not free. You're paying with your data. And obviously with things like finance, law, and health, those are three disciplines that have a lot of very sensitive data. So be aware, if you ain't paying, you're probably paying with your data. And the second thing is, when we're using these tools, you have to bring privacy in mind, right? These tools will not do it for you. So if you say to a tool like a Google Colab, hey, let's analyze my checking account for patterns in my spending, please take the time to strip away your account number, right? Things like that, to protect your data. One of the things that's generally true about data is that the more unique it is, the less predictive it is. So it's probably a good idea to strip away some of that stuff anyway. Like if you go to your credit card statement or your bank statement, there's a good chance you'll see the expense, but then you'll also see a category, dining out, travel, movies, whatever. the categories are more useful than the individual expenses. You don't really care how much you spent at McDonald's versus Wendy's. You care, what did I spend on dining out as a category? And so if you strip away those unique identifiers, A, that improves the quality of the data, and B, it protects your identity to a degree because you no longer have the specific spending patterns of the individual vendors.
Okay, great privacy tips. And I love that if you're not paying, you're the product. I think that could be applied in a lot of situations, but particularly this one, because again, it's suddenly on our phone. AI is doing what it's kind of taking over Google, correct? I mean, from my view on my phone, because it says AI generated when I ask Google something or I ask Siri something. So without even me knowing it, I'm feeding that machine data. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. That's correct. You are, when you Google things and Google's using its AI overviews. I mean, to be fair, Google's collecting the data it's always collected because Google has been logging your data forever. But now it has the ability to use it in different ways.
Okay. All right. So how else are people using, or how do you see the future or the present AI helping people with their financial health?
One of the things that is so special about these tools is the way that they're trained. They're trained on basically the corpus of publicly available data, right? They've scraped the internet. And, there's a whole discussion to be had about the ethics of that, which is separate and not for this show. But what that means is that they understand the landscape of a topic better than any single human will. So they understand all of retirement planning and all of financial planning and all of investments and things. And that big picture view gives them capabilities that individuals don't have. So I could go to a tool like a Google Gemini and turn on its deep research feature, and I could say to it, hey, here's who I am broadly. I'm not going to give you my specific details, but I'm a middle-aged man. I work in a job that pays so much. I live in a house that the mortgage is so much. These are my general expenses. Audit my financial health. Here's what I'm putting aside for retirement. Here's what's in my 401k. Here's this. Here's my goals, right? I want to retire at this age. I'm in this condition of physical health. And you can spend some time, take time to write it out, or use the voice memos app on your phone to grab the beverage of choice, pour a nice cup of coffee, and talk it through. And then you can give these tools this information. Say, let's research what the best investment strategies would be for me based on my goals. I did this back in February when the new administration came in and a lot of changes to the financial world happened and to the economic world happened. I said, hey, here's my portfolio. Here's where I'm currently invested. I pulled myself out of the retirement firm, had some their own AI money management portfolio. I disagreed with their model. So I said, let's pull into money market. And then I had a long conversation going back and forth with the tool. Here's what I think is going to happen. Here's what I see in this data. Here's what I'm concerned about, wheel of tariffs and stuff like that. And what I ended up with was, it said, okay, let's take a 3-month break from the market. Just stay in money market. Just let things calm down and then reassess. 3 months came around and things are still all kinds of crazy in the data. So I said, let's take another couple months to take a break. And we got another couple months, things settled down. I said, great, now let's build a new investment strategy that's more diversified, that has less exposure to the USA overall. Look at other economies, look at some commodities that are probably going to do well in this environment, like gold, for example, because that's people, there's always flight to safety in uncertain economic circumstances. And by the way, I should add, I am not a financial professional.
But you're very smart. Okay, so you are not a financial professional, admittedly, so that's fine. But I have to just observe, you asking these questions of AI are very intelligent, deeply detailed, highly informed questions. They are not your typical consumer questions. So would a typical consumer be able to do this?
Yes, if you asked the model to start off with, I want you to play the role of an expert financial advisor who specializes in, whoever you are, who specializes in families, who specializes in single parents, whatever the thing, whoever you are, you can say as a starting point, this is the role I want you to take. Use all of the tools you have available. And here's the magic. And you can copy and paste this. So you're going to give it you're going to spend some time thinking about where you are right now. You're going to spend some time thinking about where you want to go. You're going to take inventory of where you are, and this could just be little notes on Post-its or whatever. And then you're going to say to the tool, here's who I am broadly. Here's what I want to do. Here's where I am. Here's where I want to go. Ask me this is the part to copy and paste. Ask me one question at a time until you have enough information to complete the task. So if you're saying, I want to build a financial plan, ask me one question at a time until you have enough information to complete the task. And what the model will do, it will start behaving like a financial advisor and asking you, well, what age do you want to retire? Do you own a house? And all these things. And it's smart enough to have those questions for you.
Okay. All right. So you have to tell the machine what you want specifically. Okay. Very interesting.
And you have to go into it with a mindset of curiosity. So you're not going to say, here's exactly what I do on this. You're going to say, let's have a conversation. The way you would with a real financial advisor. Let's have a conversation. What am I missing? What don't I know about? Like, what are my risks that I can't see?
So interesting. And then what you do with that information is kind of what, as a consumer, what you would do if you talk to one person is that you'd go get a second opinion, because you could then go to a real live person and say, this is what I've discovered. Help me do this. Or, what do you think? Because just like any good consumer would get kind of like 3 estimates on making a decision about anything, that this could be one of them. And we are saying, don't be the product. If you're not paying, you're the product. So there are so many platforms that are AI. Is there one that you recommend, or what is the price point on these things so that people can understand? Because I think that it's such a big landscape that now we also are scared as consumers to go in and get scammed. Like, why do I have to pay for this? It can be free, that kind of thing. So what do you recommend?
The 3 that I suggest to people, and it's a question of comfort and or whatever, what you already have access to, would be one of either ChatGPT from OpenAI, which is pretty good.
And you can pay for that?
Yep. There's a $20 a month version.
Okay.
There's Google's Gemini, which again, there's a $20 a month for the pro version, or Anthropic's Claude. It's all about $20 a month, give or take. If I had to make a recommendation to the average consumer thinking about data privacy and capabilities, I would recommend Google's Gemini, because obviously it's backed by Google. Google's not going to run out of money anytime soon, right? And you also get a bunch of additional features with Google's that you don't get, that are not personal finance related, like the ability to make movies and images and stuff like that, which is all fun. It's very useful generally. But the 2 big things that Google has, one is they have very smart models, and 2, they have that deep research capability, which is, it can produce like analyst level reporting if you prompt it well. So for example, I might say in Google's Gemini, in a deep research flow, I say, let's pull together an audit of no load index funds across different firms. I want you to use only firms that have this much capitalization, or I might, I want you to use data only after January 1st, 2025, so that we're working with current stuff, or I want to make sure, the funds have, whatever criteria, and it will take 15 to 30 minutes and go off and search the web and follow your instructions and come back and say, hey, here's what I found. I did this recently for a trip I'm taking in November to London. I said, I'm going to be flying to London. I don't care which of the 6 airports that you go to, but I'm leaving out of Boston, Logan. I have this much money to spend. I care about, nonstop if possible, right? Or one stop if it's Ireland, because, who doesn't want to stop in Ireland? And I care about this, that, and stuff. And it came back and said, here's 6 flights that match your criteria. Like I said, no red eyes, right? so here's 6 criteria, and these are the recommendations. And it went out and did the research for me. And that is so useful as a consumer, because A, it meets my budget, and B, it tries as best it can to satisfy, all the requirements I've given it. Say, like, these are the things that I want in this trip, or this, so you can use these tools for any kind of planning to do really good research. And then the advice we always give people, and you mentioned this, Julie, is in finance, law, and health, you always, always, always consult with a human to validate their findings.
Right. And with AI taking a lot of, like, and that's the next topic I want to talk about, is taking a lot of jobs. But this is a supplement. This is like for finance, law, and health that you're saying, you would never just, again, like you're on the internet, oh, I think this medicine is going to cure me, I'll take it. Of course, a lot of people do that. And we all, I remember when I was young, my fiance had a health condition, and I thought it would save his life by buying a magnetic mattress pad, because I heard about it on an infomercial. Remember those before the internet? And I bought it. It's crazy the things you do, fear and consumption, right? But when it comes to those huge, very high stakes subjects of finance, law, and health, that is really great advice. And especially keeping your data private and putting it in a paid, a subscription-based AI platform. I think that those are huge takeaways for this kind of work. AI is just so vast. Is there anything else you're seeing besides, well, first, I guess I want to talk about, I have a son who just graduated, with a computer science degree. So, he is part of this statistic right now of not finding that entry-level position. And so I know from my experience with him that this is an issue. What other fields are you seeing this in? And in the reverse, are you seeing it help any other fields?
So any field where there is a substantial lack of humans will in some way benefit from AI. So if you were to look at, for example, Indeed.com produces a whole series of data every week, actually, of hiring demand relative to February 2020. And the fields that are in highest demand right now, as of Monday, physicians and surgeons, almost 200% demand increase over February 2020. Understandable. Therapists, right? 182% increase in demand. Insurance, 152% increase. Civil engineering, sports, personal care and home health, veterinary, dental, medical technician, pharmacy. Do you see a trend here? Healthcare, in particular, needs more humans than ever, and we have depleted many of them. We've burned out a lot of doctors, a lot of paramedics, a lot of therapists. And therapy itself is in dire straits as a profession because so many people have been burned out from the pandemic and stuff, and from current circumstances. So all those fields are in dire need of people. And there are obviously people trying to figure out how can we use artificial intelligence safely in those fields to supplement the sheer number of people that aren't there. One of the conversations I've had with licensed therapists is the debate: is mediocre therapy administered by a machine better than no therapy at all? And the answer is, we don't know, because we've never had to test it. But their initial responses, as long as there's good guardrails, which there can be, but they're not built into these systems by default, mediocre therapy would be better because, like with all professions, it's a bell curve. On one end, there's like the superstars. Like, they will never be replaced by machines. They are the rock stars of their profession. There's this big bell curve in the middle of okay, right? Okay, this person's an okay therapist. They're not causing a harm, but they may not be doing much either. And then on the other end is the awful therapist who you'd be better off talking to a Furby, if you remember those toys from the 90s. And so AI can certainly replace the Furby end of the spectrum, and it should, because those therapists are actively dangerous. Eat away a good amount of the mediocre, because if you're not getting any help now, getting no help from a human or getting no help from a machine is a wash, right? So those are the fields where you see a lot of potential. The fields that are being impacted very heavily, marketing is one, arts and entertainment, scientific research and development, IT operations, media and communications, information design, and at the very bottom of the list, software development, because it turns out that AI models are superb at coding. They are better coders than any human properly used. And where a human plays a role is in managing the tools. So you're not fingers on keyboard typing anymore. You are now thinking and designing and asking questions. But it's a question of mathematics at that point. If you trained as a first violin and it turns out that the orchestra is now machines, there's only room for one conductor of the orchestra, right? So you are now competing with every other member of that orchestra who used to be employed. So all of you are trying to figure out, how do I become the conductor? And only one of you can.
Aha, great analogy. I completely can see that. So interesting and kind of devastating, because you can look at this trend and see where it's gone, but then you have groups of individuals who have dedicated so much time learning a skill or thinking. I mean, I guess this is a life lesson, right? We all think we're going to end up someplace after 4 years, 6 years, whatever the study is. And then the environment, the industry changes. And this AI, this isn't unique to the world and the last century of major changes, but it is certainly jarring every single time it happens.
It is. I mean, we saw this in the 90s and especially in the 2000s as outsourcing really took off, global outsourcing of work. And in fact, it's developing nations that will be hit hardest by AI, because that call center that you were shipping, calls off to pay people $1.50 an hour to answer calls in wherever, you now can just have machines do, and you don't need to send that labor overseas anymore. You can do it all, programmatically at much lower costs. The challenge for the economy as a whole is that AI is really good at the basic stuff, right? There's a recent study that just came out a couple weeks ago about the impact of AI on jobs by seniority. And as you look at the data, the more senior someone is, the less AI impacts their job, because there's more complexity to the job. But that first entry level is being eaten alive by AI, because all of the tasks in it are so automatable. So I used to work at a PR agency, and the junior most person, the account coordinator, basically had 4 jobs. Copy and paste media results from Google to a spreadsheet, right? Take notes during client calls and email the client the notes after the call. Write the first draft of a press release from a template, and fetch coffee for the manager. Of those 4 tasks, the only one AI can't do is fetch coffee, and managers can get their own damn coffee. So the rest of those tasks, a machine can do all of them, which means you don't need that person.
So it's interesting. I read somewhere that in other times where tech has advanced, whether it was the internet or, again, maybe it's even the outsourcing, I'm not sure, but I'll use the internet as an example. CEOs and companies have used that advancement to grow their teams. And in this situation, the opposite is occurring. There's so much cost cutting and slashing. Can you speak to why that is happening instead of, embracing it, but keeping teams?
It's not necessarily true. It's just that it's harder to see. So when agriculture got automated, farms used to employ hundreds of thousands of people, and sometimes in appalling conditions, right? We had slavery as an artifact of the pre-industrial farming. Then we got things like the mechanical combine and stuff, and suddenly you don't need those people. Now, granted, there's a whole socioeconomic and political discussion to be had that's completely separate, but the reality is that agriculture went from 1,000 people harvesting corn from a field to one dude driving a John Deere X9 1100, listen to podcasts as the GPS guided automated combine that's as large as a house just rolls down this field and picks up the corn. And so instead of a person harvesting a bushel of corn in an hour, that same person can harvest 3,000 bushels an hour, and you don't need as many people. The difference is agriculture's revolution happened over 150 years. You never had to do things differently. Your kids did, then their kids did and stuff. And 5 generations later, it's that one guy driving the John Deere. What's happening in AI is not a question of change. It's the speed of change that's the problem. We're going to have 150 weeks to figure this out.
The speed in which everything is happening right now is so rapid that it's head spinning and hard to keep up, which is why I'm so glad I have the opportunity to talk to you and kind of rip open this curtain. There's an aspect of finance that is beyond the numbers. It's personal. We have experiences that, no matter how much we talk about them to a therapist, they still are ours. And so personal finance is personal. And especially when we couple up and we have to deal with our finances with another human being, that can be really challenging to kind of decipher, priorities and all that kind of stuff. So what you're saying is that we can even prompt AI to take in some of those experiences and develop a plan that might be more personal than just numbers.
Absolutely. And in some cases, depending on how well you prompt it, it can be a neutral or even an intentionally adversarial party. So you can say to it, don't agree with me, challenge my assumptions. What don't I see? What don't I know? What have I missed? What have I gotten wrong? And you present it with your finances or your strategy or whatever, and you can say like, yeah, tell me what is not visible here. And then with that finding, you go talk to your human financial advisor and say, here's some things that maybe we didn't think about that, what about this? What about this? And that's where these tools, again, are so superb, is the ability to look at the big picture, because that's what they see naturally, and say, yeah, but what about this? Like, you have nothing invested in commodities. You have nothing invested in international treasury, international other countries. You have nothing invested. Maybe, you're a person who believes in cryptocurrencies. I personally don't. It's not my thing, but there are people who do. A tool could say, hey, if this is your thing, have you checked out this? And so these tools all know that. One of the challenges that people have to get over with these tools is they're not human, and they are programmed and designed to be helpful. Sometimes you have to tell them the way you're going to be helpful is by challenging me, not agreeing with me.
Okay. Which is so interesting, because oftentimes in real life, I guess we could use that. We're talking AI and then IRL in real life. We have conversations with people, like ask them something like, do you think I should do this? But we're pointedly having the conversation with the person who's going to give us the permission, right? Who's going to be like, yeah, YOLO, you only live once, you should do this. Whereas with AI, you can actually prompt it to be that person and then give you the contradictory opinion and then challenge you more. So you're not having, like, you can create that individual. That's interesting.
You can. So, for example, in my newsletter this past weekend, I was doing a tutorial on how to use AI to help you prepare for job interviews.
I loved that. Please tell us before you go on how to get your newsletter, because I think it's really important.
You can go to almosttimely.substack.com. That's almosttimely.substack.com. And one of the things I said as part of the prompt for the late stage interview is I said, you're going to role play a hiring manager who is looking for a reason to weed me out. You are going to be adversarial. You're going to be confrontational. You are going to pick apart my CV, and you are going to ask me questions that are borderline hostile. And it came back with questions like, it said, like, hey, you're applying for this position as chief AI officer at State Street. You have no background in institutional finance. Why do you even think you're remotely qualified for this job, right? Can you imagine being asked that in person in an interview? Like, whoa. But if you have that interview experience with a machine and it just slaps you and says, hey, your experience is not relevant here at all. I can't even see how you would navigate, the complexities of enterprise financial instruments. Now you're ready. Now you've had that experience from a machine that doesn't care about your feelings, because it has no feelings, and followed your directions to be hostile. And you're like, okay, if this person I'm actually interviewing with asks me this very adversarial question, I'm ready. I know how to answer it.
I mean, honestly, when I read that newsletter about trying to find a job and using AI, I was riveted. I mean, part of me is like having to read some of it a couple of times, because again, this is a language. It's kind of like those who aren't familiar with personal finance. There's acronyms, there's terms, there's just strings of words that you're like, what is this? And then you go back and kind of decipher it. But the nut of all of it, of how many times and you apply, and also sitting down and literally talking about yourself in a voice memo and then putting that into AI so that it can, what was that word that says what's your purpose, what you're good at?
Ikigai.
Yes. Tell me about that word.
So it's a Japanese concept. It basically is, what are you good at? What do you enjoy? What are people willing to pay you for? And what makes the world a better place, right? So if you can figure out the intersection of all four, that's sort of like the ideal job. Like my current job, because I'm the co-founder of my own company, is pretty much that. I love what I do. People are willing to pay me money for what I do. I'm good at what I do. And we don't take on clients that we think are going to make the world a worse place. We've rejected clients, said like, yeah, you know what? You just don't align with our values. We can't work with you. if you can sit down and talk to AI, it knows what that concept is, particularly if you use the prompts that were in the newsletter, which, by the way, is free. There's no cost to it. Then you can talk through, okay, well, what are the soft skills or the durable skills, I call them, the skills that you bring from job to job that you have, empathy, good communication, critical thinking, creativity. What are those things that you have? And what are jobs that fit that you might not think you're a good fit for, right? So these tools, again, they see the big picture. So you might say, my life so far has been in accounts payable and accounts receivable. I've been in an AP and AR forever. And, my current company is doing layoffs or whatever. Just because you've always worked in AP and AR doesn't mean you have to continue only doing that. The durable skills, the transferable skills you've learned doing that, there are other jobs out there. But these tools can say, well, if you're good at this, maybe you might also be good at this kind of job because those same transferable skills apply.
Right. And so the AI with that data can kind of see have a perspective and because of all the information it knows and can create that for you when you're stuck, right? Like you're the one who's thinking like, oh, I'm tunnel vision. This is what I do. This is the only thing I know how to do. And it can round that out for you and give you more opportunities. I loved that newsletter.
I'm going to do a third issue this weekend because I had no idea I was doing a series, but apparently I am. Because people have asked, how do we do the hardest part of the job search, which is negotiating pay? So we're going to talk through how to do that. But it starts with personal finance. One of the things I learned way back in my days when I did work in financial services is the most valuable thing any person can do is like a month level cash flow analysis. Yeah, how much money's coming in, how much money's going out? Because no matter what financial circumstances you're in, if more money's going out than is coming in, eventually you run into trouble, right? And if more money's coming in than is going out, eventually you do well. I mean, it may be beyond the span of your lifetime, but positive cash flow is everything. And so we'll walk through that first because that determines your pay. If you say, these are my expenses and I need to always have 10% more coming in than going out on any given month, plus, the 10% buffer that financial folks generally recommend, then you can say, this is the floor. I can't get paid less than this. And if I know that I'm in a job search and they come with this number, I know I have to say, like, no matter what, if it's below this number, I can't say yes to this job.
I'm looking forward to that. I do, I appreciate your time. I do want to get to some rapid questions. I'm going to encourage everyone. I read an excerpt of your book, which the book, you have several books, but the most recent one, Almost Timeless, 48 Foundation Principles of Generative AI. And the whole add a banana concept I love. So I'm going to leave that as a teaser. If you want to know what add a banana is, please Google that book. Go on Christopher Penn. Do you have any other, besides your Substack, any other way that people can find you?
So you can find me personally at ChristopherSPenn.com, and you can find me at work at TrustInsights.ai. Okay,
awesome. And then you can find out what add a banana means. But I've got to get to our behind the curtain call rapid fire questions. So here we go. You ready?
Go for it.
Okay, they're a little bit influenced by the Actors Studio because I have a theater background and I love James Lipton. So here we go. What is your favorite word?
Probably these days, probability, because so much of life is based on it.
What is your least favorite word?
I don't know that I have one other than a certain person's name.
Okay, I won't ask who. What is your theme song? Like if you had a walk-on song, if you played baseball, what would it be?
It is the Overture to Wrath of the Lich King from the World of Warcraft expansion.
That is so specific. I'm going to have to look that up. Okay, what is your most used emoji?
Most used emoji is probably the thumbs up.
What gets you motivated to do the work you do?
I am basically a 12-year-old playing with toys. If I am completely honest, it's just that the toys are more complicated and people are willing to pay money for the outputs, but I'm still just a kid playing with toys every day.
That's amazing. What keeps you from doing your work?
Other human beings.
I bet. Okay. What is money advice that you wish you could erase from your memory?
It's not that I would erase it. It's the concept of good and bad debt. There is no such thing. You have debt, and generally debt is something that does not work in your favor. It may be more or less favorable to you, but it is still not a good thing. It's like, I love that cliche. Oh, it's a good problem to have. It's still a problem.
Right. Good point. Good point. What's money advice you wish you had received sooner?
Cash flow analysis. By far, I learned about that in my 30s. I wish I'd known about it in my 20s, because cash is king, right? No matter the economy, good or bad, if more money is coming in than going out, you're in good shape. If more money is going out than coming in, you're in trouble no matter what.
Good point. And lastly, give our listeners a challenge. What is something that they could do today that could change their financial lives?
The number one thing that I would suggest that you do is export your current financial statements. So from your bank, from your credit card, whatever, remove the personally identifying information, your name, your account numbers, etc., and put it into a tool like Google Colab, or the AI tool of your choice, and say, let's do a review of my finances. My goals are this. Ask me one question at a time until you have enough information to perform a comprehensive and critical review of my finances, telling me what I'm doing well, what I'm doing poorly, what I'm not doing that I should be, what I'm doing that I should stop.
Wow, that is a challenge. Let's see who can do it. This is amazing. Thank you, Christopher Penn. I so appreciate your time today. And you've made AI a little bit more, like a little light, a little bit more accessible and less scary. And I appreciate you for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Behind the Curtain, Money Made Simple. If you liked what you heard, if you learned something, subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend, because good financial education deserves a standing ovation. And remember, you don't have to know all the steps before you take the stage. You just need the courage to show up, ask questions, and maybe, just maybe, sing a little bit along the way. I'm Julie Beckham, and Behind the Curtain, Money Made Simple is brought to you by Rockland Trust, member FDIC, the bank where each relationship matters, because we want you to have a healthy relationship with money at any age.